I leaned back in my chair, the hum of the cafe wrapping around us like a soft blanket. Armin sat across from me, sipping his coffee with that quiet confidence I'd noticed from the first time we met. I didn't plan to ask the question. It just slipped out in a teasing tone. Do you love older women? For a heartbeat, I expected him to laugh, brush it off, maybe give a playful answer. Instead, he looked at me, not with surprise, but with a calm certainty that caught me off guard. Love has no age limit, he said, his voice steady, as if it was the simplest truth in the world. I froze for a second, unsure whether to smile or change the subject, but something about the way he said it made the air between us shift. I stirred my tea to cover the sudden rush of thoughts. I had been careful for years, careful not to invite too much closeness, careful to keep conversations with younger men light and safe. My last relationship had ended with more than just heartbreak. It had left me with a keen awareness of how people judged, whispered, and assumed. I had learned to live without expecting much from anyone, especially in matters of love. Yet here was Armin, 10 years younger than me, speaking as though the rules I'd built my life around didn't exist. We moved to lighter topics, talking about a community event we had just wrapped up, about how everyone had pitched in to clean up the park. He made me laugh easily, his quick wit slipping in between sentences without effort. When we left the cafe, the evening air was cool, and the streetlights were just starting to glow. He walked beside me toward the bus stop, matching his pace to mine without needing to be asked. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on small things, movies, books, the best street food stalls in the neighborhood. I caught myself noticing how easy it was to talk to him. Not the kind of easy that comes from politeness, but the kind that feels natural, unforced. At the bus stop, he stayed until my ride came, hands in his pockets, a faint smile on his face. We said goodbye like we always did, but when I sat down by the window and the bus pulled away, I found myself turning back to look for him. He was still there, watching until the bus was out of sight. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept replaying his answer in my mind. Love has no age limit. It wasn't just the words, it was the conviction in them. Part of me wanted to believe it, to let go of the invisible line I'd drawn between us. But another part warned me to stay where I was, safe behind walls built from experience. Still, I couldn't deny it. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure I wanted to shift it back. Days slipped into weeks, and what began as casual conversations grew into something neither of us had planned. We found ourselves meeting more often, never with a set arrangement, but always as if the day somehow guided us to each other. A quick coffee after work turned into sitting together for hours, trading stories about the past and dreams for the future. I learned that Armin had a quiet resilience shaped by hardship. He told me about losing his father when he was still a teenager, about stepping into responsibilities sooner than most. I shared pieces of my own story, not all at once, but enough for him to see the scars beneath my calm. There was no grand gesture pulling us closer, just the steady rhythm of shared moments. One rainy afternoon, he brought me a copy of a book I had mentioned weeks earlier, one that wasn't easy to find anymore. I didn't know how to react at first, holding it like it was something rare and fragile. He brushed it off as nothing, but I knew it wasn't nothing. Another day, I cooked him a dish from my childhood, and the way he closed his eyes to savor it felt like a quiet thank you that didn't need words. People around us began to notice, their glances lingering when we were together. I caught the whispers now and then, though no one spoke to me directly. It was the sort of gossip that floats in the air without ever landing in your hands, but you can still feel its weight. I pretended not to care, but late at night, I'd think about it more than I wanted to admit. Was this harmless connection beginning to tread into dangerous territory? Was I letting him get too close? The answer seemed to come in moments that felt almost stolen. One evening, we walked home under a row of streetlights, our footsteps echoing in the quiet. We spoke less than usual, the silence comfortable yet charged. He slowed when I did, looked at me in a way that seemed to search past my words, and then simply smiled. It was brief, but it stayed with me long after we parted. I told myself we were just friends, though I knew it wasn't the whole truth. I could feel the shift, subtle but undeniable, each time his laughter met mine or his voice softened when he said my name. I didn't know where it was leading, but the uncertainty didn't scare me as much as I thought it would. Instead, it left me curious, almost hopeful, in a way I hadn't felt for a very long time. The change came quietly, not in what we felt but in how the world began to look at us. The whispers that once felt distant started to circle closer. A mutual acquaintance made a casual remark about our age difference, as if it were a curious fact worth sharing. I laughed it off in the moment, but the words lingered. They followed me home, sitting heavy in my mind long after I had closed the door. I began to question what I was doing. Was I letting him invest his time in something the world would never fully accept? Would he look back one day and see me as a phase, a detour before something more fitting came along? Armin noticed the change in me before I said a word. One evening, as we walked through the park, he stopped and looked at me directly. "You've been distant," he said, not accusing, just observing. I tried to brush it off, telling him I was busy, but his eyes didn't move. I finally admitted I was worried about the talk, about how people viewed us, about whether I was holding him back. He listened without interrupting, hands in his pockets, expression calm but intent. When I finished, he simply said, "I don't love you because of your age. I love you because of you." The words caught me completely off guard, their certainty leaving no space for doubt in his voice. Still, not everything was simple. When he mentioned me to his mother, she hesitated. She wasn't unkind, but I could hear the caution in her questions. She wondered how others would see it, whether it would make his life harder. I understood her fears. They were the same ones I had wrestled with for years. I told him maybe it was better if we slowed down, even stepped back. I said it as though I was protecting him, though deep down, I knew I was also protecting myself from the pain of possible rejection. He refused to let the distance grow. A few days later, we found ourselves on a quiet bench, the world moving around us while we stayed still. He spoke about how he had learned early in life that happiness was rare and should be guarded fiercely. That the people who mattered would accept what made him happy, and those who didn't weren't meant to shape his choices. I listened, realizing that the fear I carried wasn't really about society. It was about me trusting enough to let someone stand beside me when it wasn't easy. That night I decided something had to change. I couldn't keep measuring my happiness against the approval of others. If love truly had no age limit, then it also had no room for fear. And with him sitting beside me, steady and certain, I began to believe it. We didn't make any announcements or grand declarations. The decision was quiet, almost unspoken, yet completely certain. We chose to stop hiding what was already clear to us, that whatever lay ahead, we wanted to face it together. The first time we appeared side by side at the community festival, it wasn't planned as a statement. We simply arrived together, walked through the crowd, and didn't let go of each other's hand. I felt the weight of some stares, noticed the way certain conversations paused when we passed, but I also caught the warm smiles of people who seemed genuinely happy for us. Armin didn't glance around to measure the reaction. His attention stayed fixed on me, steady and reassuring. Later that afternoon, as the music drifted through the air, he handed me a small box without a word. Inside was a delicate silver locket, engraved with the words, "No age limit." I laughed quietly, touched not just by the gift but by the simplicity of the message. It wasn't a grand promise, but it carried the essence of everything he had been telling me from the start. I slipped it around my neck, feeling its light weight settle over my heart, and in that moment, I knew I no longer wanted to shrink our story to fit the comfort of others. In the weeks that followed, our life began to take shape in ways that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. We made small plans, weekend trips to places we'd never visited, cooking meals together, late-night walks where the city felt like it belonged only to us. There were still moments when doubt tried to creep in, but they were fleeting, fading quickly in the presence of what we were building. His certainty gave me the courage to stand in my own without apology. One evening, as we sat by the window watching the rain, he asked where I saw us in 5 years. I told him I didn't have a perfect picture, but I knew I wanted him in it. He smiled, saying that was enough for him. It struck me then how love doesn't need to map out decades in advance to be real. Sometimes it's just about knowing you want the next day, and the day after that with the same person. I often think back to that night in the cafe when I asked him a question I thought was harmless. I couldn't have known then that his answer would pull me out of years of guarded living, that it would open a door I didn't realize I'd closed. Now, as I trace my fingers over the locket, I understand the truth in his words. Love never cared about counting years. It counted the moments that made life worth living. And ours had only just begun. We never talked about happily ever after in the way storybooks do, because we knew life didn't work that way. What we had was built on small choices, and every day we kept choosing each other. That was enough. As time passed, the noise from outside grew quieter. People who had once questioned us seemed to move on, and those who mattered stayed close, offering support in ways that felt genuine. We learned to live without glancing over our shoulders, and with every shared morning coffee, every late-night conversation, the bond between us settled into something steady and unshakable. We started carving out traditions of our own. Sunday mornings at the same little cafe, Friday night walks no matter the weather, exchanging handwritten notes tucked into the pages of books we passed back and forth. These weren't grand acts, but they became markers of a life we were shaping together. There was comfort in the familiarity, yet it never felt dull. Each moment carried a quiet significance, a reminder that love could be found in the rhythm of everyday life. Of course, challenges didn't disappear. There were days when work left us tired and short-tempered, moments when plans fell apart, and times when we simply didn't see eye to eye. But the difference was in how we handled it. Instead of retreating, we leaned in, listening more than speaking, remembering that our connection mattered more than winning an argument. Every challenge we worked through felt like another stitch in the fabric we were weaving. One afternoon, while sorting through old photographs, I came across a picture of myself from years ago, before I knew him. My smile looked different, careful, as though it had been put on for the camera. He glanced over my shoulder, studied the photo for a moment, and said softly, "You smile with your whole face now." I didn't need to look in a mirror to know he was right. He hadn't just brought joy into my life. He had brought out a part of me I thought was gone for good. We began talking more openly about the future, not as a checklist but as a shared vision. Places we wanted to see, milestones we wanted to celebrate, and even the kind of home we hoped to build one day. None of it was certain, but it didn't need to be. What mattered was that we were planning it together. Sometimes late at night I still think about the moment that started everything. Simple question. An answer that felt like truth. And all the days that followed, each one proving that love really does ignore the numbers, the gossip, and the doubts. It grows where it's nurtured, and when it's real, it asks only one thing, that you keep choosing it every single day. Seasons changed, but the way we felt remained steady, deepening in quiet ways that didn't need grand declarations. We had settled into a rhythm that felt natural, yet never dull. There was always something new to learn about each other, some small detail revealed in passing conversation or shared silence. We noticed the things others might overlook, the way one of us would instinctively reach for the other's hand in a crowd, or how our eyes would meet across a room and say more than words ever could. These unspoken connections became the threads holding our days together. We began traveling to nearby towns on weekends, exploring markets, tasting food we'd never tried before, and collecting little souvenirs that reminded us of each trip. The walls of my home slowly became lined with framed photographs, not posed but captured in the middle of laughter or thought. Looking at them, I saw the story of us, not in perfect moments but in genuine ones. Each picture was a quiet defiance against the idea that our love was unusual or temporary. There were still occasional reminders of how others viewed us. A raised eyebrow here, a hesitant question there. But the sting they once carried had faded. We no longer felt the need to explain ourselves. Instead, we lived in a way that spoke for us. Those who cared to see the truth noticed the ease between us, the steadiness that comes from two people who choose to stand side by side through more than just the good days. One evening we found ourselves sitting by the water, watching the sunset. The sky shifted from gold to deep crimson, the kind of beauty that makes you stop speaking and just breathe it in. Armin turned to me and said, "If I could go back to that first day, I'd still give the same answer." I didn't need to ask which day. He meant the night in the cafe, the question that had changed everything. His certainty hadn't wavered, and mine had only grown stronger. We spoke about dreams in a way that wasn't about ticking boxes but about living fully. He wanted to start a small business one day, something that would let him work with his hands. I told him I wanted to write more, maybe even put our story into words. We didn't know if either dream would happen exactly as imagined, but talking about them felt like planting seeds for a future we both wanted to see. As we walked home that night, his hand found mine again, warm and sure. I thought about all the doubts that once seemed so heavy and how light they felt now. Love hadn't just crossed the boundary of age. It had erased it completely. What remained was something timeless, something worth carrying forward no matter what came next.